Good morning. Thank you for joining me. For our readings this morning, I am going to be reading from 1 Corinthians chapter 15, 1 through 11. Sisters and brothers, I want to remind you of the gospel I preached to you, which you received and in which you stand firm. You are being saved by it at this very moment, if you hold fast to it as I preached it to you. Otherwise, you have believed in vain. I handed on to you, first of all, what I myself received, that Christ died for our sins in accordance with the Scriptures, that he was buried and in accordance with the Scriptures rose on the third day, that he was seen by Peter, then by the 12. After that, he was seen by more than 500 sisters and brothers at once, most of whom are still alive, although some have fallen asleep. Next he was seen by James, then by all the apostles. Last he was seen by me, as one yanked from the womb. I am the least of the apostles. In fact, because I persecuted the church of God, I do not even deserve the name. But by God's favor, I am what I am. This favor that God has given to me has not proven fruitless. Indeed, I have worked harder than all the others, not on my own, but through the grace of God. In any case, whether it be I or they, this is what we preach, and this is what you believed. These verses, in some ways, serve as a prologue to the rest of the chapter, but they also serve as a bit of an introduction and validation of sorts of the man Paul and his role as an apostle. The word apostle comes from the Greek root I send or I depart, and the original meaning of the word was essentially a messenger or a delegate. In other words, the apostles were those who were commissioned and entrusted by Jesus to serve as delegates for the gospel and teachings of Christ. And for most of these apostles, they knew and experienced Jesus during his earthly life. They walked alongside him. They learned from his teachings. They loved him. They grieved his death. And they were some of the first to see him once again following his resurrection. Paul, however, did not have the same experience with Jesus. Paul didn't walk alongside Jesus while he taught, nor did Paul grieve his death upon the cross. Instead, Paul entered the story later, and he entered in direct opposition to the ministry Jesus had started. He actively persecuted those within the early Christian movement. Yet, as Paul says in this passage, through the grace of God, the resurrected Christ was revealed to Paul, just as with the other apostles. And in experiencing Jesus in this way, Paul was transformed so much that he left his old life behind and entered the apostleship himself. Paul admits he was the most unlikely of apostles, perhaps the most undeserving. But as he says so beautifully, but by God's favor, I am what I am. Through God's grace, Paul found belonging, and in belonging, he found purpose. What strikes me most about this passage is that in it we are reminded of the intimate way we too are part of the gospel. Paul shows us that through God's grace, each of our lives can be personally intersected and radically changed by the gospel of Christ. He reminds us that in experiencing Jesus, it's not limited to one reality or to one place and time. We each are met by the resurrected Christ in different ways. And I think that we are continually met by Christ in new ways throughout our lives. I believe that the gospel and the resurrection is a never-ending invitation for us to enter the story. It is a never-ending invitation to belonging, and it is a never-ending invitation to finding our role as messengers within it. We don't have to be perfect. We don't have to be deserving of it. We don't have to be without faults. We certainly don't have to have all the answers. We just have to be open to the transformation that comes when God is revealed to us, and let that transformation lead us forward. This week at our Feminist Theology Book Club, we were talking about how this time of pandemic has begun to change some of the ways that we live into relationships. Certainly, some social distancing has left us mourning our ability to hold on to one another. But at the same time, it has also made us tap into relationships in deeper ways. We are learning anew what it really means to be there for one another. Without the ease of a quick hug or a simple "how are you," we are instead learning how to truly wrestle and find rest with one another in some really complicated emotions. We are learning about sacrifice and what it means to give up some of the things that make for a comfortable life so that we can ensure the safety and well being of others. We're learning just how important and difficult love and generosity are in the midst of uncertainty. We're learning a lot. A lot is being revealed to us. Christ is being revealed to us. So let us enter the story. Let us, like Paul, be transformed by our revelations with Christ's love, and let it change us for good. Amen.